BGI when BlackRock did and passed, and BlackRock won, right? That's a coulda, woulda, shoulda moment. I think but now it's too late to start a passive business. I don't think you can compete. And secondly, our quants are, they have a very, very high intellectual standards. They like to work on complicated problems, and passive is a very important asset class for clients, but it's not a very complicated problem. And if I they like to be thrown really complicated things. When you throw them a Rubik's cube, they debate as to who can do it in under 5 seconds, which is a quick time. But it's sort of it's not intellectually interesting to our people.
Luke, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for taking this time to talk to me.
It's been great fun. Thanks.
COVID-19 has exposed a sickness in global society. It's exacerbated deep-rooted inequalities in the United States.
The wealth divide has just exploded in the wrong direction.
Structural inequalities is not healthy. It means we're leaving productivity on the table.
Around the world, migrant laborers are bearing the brunt of the crisis. And while rich nations are well into their vaccine campaigns, developing countries are falling behind.
We're not going to have as swift a recovery in the United States or in Europe if we don't make sure that everybody gets vaccinated.
2.5 million women have left the U.S. workforce due to the pandemic, while corporations face a growing demand to fulfill promises of inclusion.
Collectively, large companies have not done a great job on diversity.
You have to do. You have to believe it's critical for your business.
As the world starts on a path to recovery, how do we ensure no one gets left behind?
The moment for radical change has arrived. Clearly the system is not working.
Trailblazers in business, technology, and public health convene to map out a more equal and inclusive future. It's time to move from words to action. This is the Bloomberg Equality Summit. Hello, I'm Carol Masser. The Bloomberg Equality Summit was held virtually as the U.S. marked 1 year since the start of the COVID-19 crisis. In the first months of 2021, new vaccines hold the promise of a return to normal. Even so, it's clear greater efforts will be needed to repair the social and economic damage of a pandemic that has exposed and deepened inequities across gender, class, and race. Leaders at the front lines of industry and policy came together at the summit to discuss how companies and institutions can work to close these gaps and bring about lasting change. The process starts with recognizing the stakes of the challenge.
It's become a vicious, destructive cycle where inequality has fueled the spread of the disease, and then the spread has created both health, economic, and education inequality that further fuels inequality. So I think the moment for radical change has arrived. Clearly the system is not working.
Everywhere you go, the majority of people believe that they should vaccinate their own country first. And they struggle to understand sometimes how important it is to open up economies in other countries because, every country is dependent on imports and exports.
The economic impact of the pandemic has fallen disproportionately on women's shoulders. For the first time in history, for example, the economic downturn in the U.S., we're seeing unemployment and income losses affecting women more than men.
This is not about doing a favor for women, people of color. This is about EPS. This is about higher EBITDA. This is about business, because we know from the research and the evidence that companies that are more diverse are more profitable.
One thing that COVID has revealed to all of us is that racial equity, structural racism is a thing. It always has been.
Listen, I think George Floyd and the uproar around George Floyd, when everybody saw a man get murdered in real life.
I am one who hopes that what we saw last year in terms of the uprising against the social injustice and the racism in the United States as well as in other countries, perhaps, and I hope, has reached an inflection point.
Women have had the most devastation, women and people of color, during this crisis. And so if we're going to have a full response and a swift response, we have to stop thinking as a world of gender equality as this nice thing to do when we get to it, or this side issue. No, it is the central issue. We are in a crisis for women and people of color in this country.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has been supporting vaccine research and global public health initiatives for decades. So co-chair Melinda Gates is well aware of the structural inequities complicating the fight against COVID-19. She shared how the vaccine rollout is progressing with Bloomberg's Emily Chang.
We still have a ways to go. We're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel here in the United States, but until all Americans are vaccinated, we still have a ways to go. But it's going to be a while until the entire world is vaccinated. So this is going to still be with us the next few years. And I think we're going to have to really watch these variants that'll be bouncing around the world. That's actually still quite concerning.
What is it about the variants that concern you?
Well, because every time we know viruses mutate, but when they mutate, they can become sometimes more deadly or more contagious. And so anytime you see these mutations, we need to be on top of them in terms of surveillance. And then we're going to have to figure out, do we need to tune various vaccines to take care of them?
Your foundation has committed $1.75 billion to the fight against COVID. I know your team is very diligent about looking at where and how that money is spent. In your view, where is the vaccine rollout working and what's not working?